overwhelms. And so, first of all, like I said, thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. So let's talk a little bit today about PTSD. And this presentation or this time that we have together here, I really wanted to do this a little bit less formally. With me not necessarily coming to the table with a list of symptoms, etc. I really think that each one of you guys as parents is going to have a sense of your own child and a sense of the symptoms that he or she is carrying. So I would like this to be a little less formal, and I would encourage you to go ahead and type in questions. I do understand we have that feature at the bottom. And so after I go ahead and speak for about 10-15 minutes here, I'll go ahead and be taking questions. My hope is to take the questions that sort of apply to folks more broadly. That's sort of what I'm going to be aiming for, but I'm open to any questions you have, and we'll see if we can pursue those and help get you the help you need, hopefully, and answer your questions. Okay. So let's start a little bit here with what is trauma? What is PTSD? What's trauma? So first of all, it's called post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm not really big on the disordered part because it's a really natural post-traumatic stress reaction, we oftentimes say. And that's a really natural, normal place for the body, soul, the mind to react after it's been through something extreme. The technical definition of trauma is any time that there's a fear of death. That's one definition. It's a very strong definition. Another definition, though, that we do have is anything that overwhelms the nervous system. Okay, so we are going to talk a little bit today about the nervous system. Our nervous system is our central processing unit. It is, if you think about your computer and the analogy for a moment, it's what runs the software. So the nerves tell the muscles to move. The nerves tell the circulation system to expand or contract. The nerves are our central unit there. Super important and kind of in this process here. So if you think about that for a minute, what happens there is you have, again, back to the definition, potentially a fear of death, potentially, and that can be held in the base of our brain right here. And I point that area out to you because we may repeat that. We may come back to that place later as a place that you could potentially hold or help your child hold to create some touch and some calmness. Okay, so right here in the base of our brain, it's right where the neck connects up with the cranium. Okay, is a really nice calming place for us to touch into as a family, or as a parent rather. So what happens is that place here in the base of our brain that's the place in our brain that's developed when we are young, when we're born as babies. We have just this, and that's our most primitive part. Then the brain grows. If you see my hand, the brain grows like this, and it fills in. This frontal lobe here then is the part of the brain that's growing as kids are the oldest. So say from about adolescence on, 13 to about 26. What happens then is that this part here is not even available to youngsters. So they're really only operating out of their most primitive, most sort of fear-based place. Part of the reason I give you that is because PTSD is primarily known now that research has advanced, we now know that PTSD is held in our bodies. Okay. So if we have anxiety, for example, then anxiety, we will talk about thoughts, obsessive thoughts, or any of that. But if you get into the actual mechanism of fear is actually what? Shaking, maybe sweating, something like that. So those are the body reactions that come. And what we as therapists have understood and been able to do now is to help manage the body symptoms. And when we help manage the body symptoms of a trauma or an experience, at that point, the thoughts fall in line and the thoughts change. Okay, so that's super important to remember. If we can help our kiddos manage their bodies, then the thoughts, the reactions, the behaviors change. So that's the latest research on PTSD, that it's especially held in the body. And that's why we kind of go into some of these bits that we're kind of going into here in the moment. So what happens then is that our kiddos are operating from their fear place, which is back here. The frontal lobe, or the thinking place, comes in and says, you're okay, you're safe. But the body doesn't necessarily believe it. The analogy I always use is the analogy of, if you've ever had to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and you tell yourself, no, you don't have to, and you lay there and you try to decide if you should or not, it's really, really hard for us to override our bodies. Eventually you do have to get up, probably. So just simply telling our child that there's nothing wrong, that it's all okay, it helps some, but not completely. Okay. So again, the word I would encourage you to use with your child is safe. You're safe, because the primary driver underneath trauma is a feeling that you're not safe. So we really want to reassure our kiddos, you're safe, you're okay. Now, of course, the problem comes in that if they have something like, for example, a chronic illness or something that could potentially reoccur, then that's going to really be that's a little bit of a tougher sell then for kids. What you really have to do at that point, and we can kind of entertain this in specific questions for folks in a minute, but in those situations, what you really would probably want to do is you would want to really remind them of their good support. You would want to remind them of how effective the medication or the hospital treatments that they've been through have been, and remind them of times they've been safe, that this so far we have kept them safe. So that's, I mean, I just kind of bring that idea of safety up. That's a super important kind of a piece in this whole process. But back to the body for a second. Keeping in mind then that as we start to, as our child, say, for example, pops some anxiety, and we want to go ahead and soothe that anxiety, for a child to tune into their body is also kind of scary. They've had their bodies perhaps poked and prodded and been through surgeries, etc. So what we want to especially do is start to get your child to tune into their body at times that are good, at times that were safe or healthy, or a beautiful day that they felt well. Help them remember those. Help them remember bringing those into their bodies to help kind of calm things. Okay. So parents have also been traumatized. Let's pause there for a second, and I can go back, and I will go back into sort of some specifics of calming your child, if that's sort of where everyone's at or what we're interested in. But also I want to touch on the idea that parents have been traumatized. Parents, one of the highest levels of trauma that we can kind of talk about in here is, and it's the highest, one of the highest levels, period, in life, is the helplessness of watching someone you love be hurt or in pain. Okay? That helplessness. That's why we do things like learn CPR, or we know exactly how to call 911 or what's going to happen when we call, because we want to be prepared. We all hate that feeling, and it is. So with us as our jobs as parents, in charge of our kids, tasked with protecting our kids, when we can't do that, that's highly traumatic for parents. I think the statistics that someone had compiled in the blurb for this is that 20% of parents fit the criterion for PTSD. To be honest, and I read that, I was a little shocked that wasn't higher. I can't imagine probably any parent not having some level of trauma in here. Now, again, whether or not you fit the full-blown criterion for PTSD, your partners, your family, other family members, siblings, etc., whether you fit that full-blown PTSD or not, anytime I look at it this way. Anytime that a person is not the same afterwards, there's a heavy potential for trauma. It was probably trauma. We hear people come out of things not the same. She was never the same. Their personality changes afterwards. If you see a kiddo with personality changes afterwards, that's probably an indicator of trauma. Yeah. Okay. Let's go through that idea. Yep, Marianne, I hear you kind of asking about never the same. Yeah. Let's pause there for just a second and consider that. Not the same afterwards. Yes. And it's true. There are ways in which, yes, you can't be the same afterwards. No doubt. You're not going to get any argument from me after that. It's true. But what we do want to have happen in healing from trauma is returning to life. That's the definition, the classic definition of healing from trauma is returning to life. So if we're not seeing ourselves or someone in our family, our kiddos return to trauma, or excuse me, try it again, return to life, then there probably is a little higher likelihood that the trauma is still there and having an effect. So you might see things like a kiddo afraid to go outside and play, afraid to go to school, join in normal activities. You might see parents that afterwards, it's super common for parents to sink into some depression afterwards, after their child is finished. Because what happens there then is there's a mourning that actually needs to happen afterwards, sometimes for parents. And that mourning is the mourning that they don't have such a simple life anymore, perhaps. Maybe it's a mourning of the lack of capacity in their child or a changed life, a mourning that they, as parents, were innocent beforehand and now carry around deeper worry. So we do have same thing. You're going to look out for changes in ways in which a person can't participate in the activities of life. Okay, that's another really clear indicator of, say, a PTSD or a struggle in that way then. Okay. The other thing I just kind of want to just add on and tack on, it's not quite in our strain here, but I feel kind of pressed to discuss COVID here for just a second. And that idea that in the climate we're in, as a therapist, I work with folks every day who are struggling, absorbing the fear that's around in our society, and absorbing the triggering of masks. It's very triggering for someone to walk out and see masks when they only saw masks, for example, during the hospital at the height of their trauma. Keep in mind that those are triggering for folks. So right now, what I really work with folks on is all of us acknowledging that we're not okay. We're not okay. We're not the same. And it's really important that we don't gaslight. And I know that's a big word, but I'm going to go ahead and use it. That we don't gaslight our kiddos by saying, you're fine, you're fine, you're fine, when their body is saying something different. So if their system is kicking up with more fear, their system might be kicking up with some worries on, is it going to happen to me? You're seeing that, your child carrying it in their system. Maybe they're feeling that depression and there's a heaviness to them where they're not leaving their room if they're a teenager, or everything feels bigger and deeper. Yeah, that's again another effect they may be carrying in their system. And we don't want to gaslight them by saying everything's okay, it's okay, it's okay. You're not going to increase your child's anxiety or depression if you acknowledge it. You're not. They already have it. They're trying to help it be heard. Imagine the times where you needed to go to someone and just explain something. And when they finally got it and they heard you, your whole system went, okay, yeah, I'm heard. That's what our kiddos sometimes want from us. So it's super important. So Deborah, I see your question. Great. I'm going to hold on at the end and then let's get into little kids. Yeah, because they are a little different than that place where we can just have a conversation with our older child. Very much so. Basically, will help make everything a little simpler and more play-based for the youngest. If you or your kids end up needing care, you have a sense, gut feel that your kiddos need care, my strong suggestion is that you try to find a somatic practitioner, a somatic therapist. Okay, somatic, the word somatic, think about it for a minute, has to do with soma. Somatic is the body. And a somatic practitioner, that's the latest edge of this field. Like every field has technologies. Somatic work is the latest edge of our field. It's the newest up and coming. It's where we're headed as a field. Everybody's been hearing a little bit more lately about mindfulness and meditation. This is the next iteration or the next wave of it, of somatics. And somatics basically means that as you, for example, would come on into therapy and you would bring in what you're struggling with, from there, what we would do is I would say, not only, of course, hear your story and what you wanted to accomplish or how it affects you, of course, but I also am going to ask, what's happening in your body right now as we talk about that? What do you notice going on? Is your stomach off? Are you shaking? Are you sweating in this moment? Do you feel like getting up and running out of the room? These are all sort of indicators then that your system is taking in that topic, that question, that moment, and it's reacting. So again, what we're encouraging these days for PTS treatment is for folks to manage, to work on the body symptoms. Okay, so things like, for example, shaking, we help folks, if you finish shaking, it does pass. We help folks with tummies. We might encourage you to put a hand on that tummy or a hot water bottle on that tummy. We might encourage you to find a weighted blanket. And I see from Nicole, my daughter just brought some. Let's see, my daughter just brought, yep. Okay, very timely, great. So let me skip to or exactly where I wanted to be. Thanks, Nicole. And that is that where you want to go to find a somatic practitioner, write it down, is traumahealing.org. First word trauma, second word healing.org. Okay. It's somatic experiencing, that's their host, their association website. And so that's a whole directory listing all over the world of somatic experiencing practitioners. That's the theory that I ended up finding. PTSD has been my passion and my love all my life, probably from my own traumas. A lot of us were led in that way. And somatic experiencing, I have found the most effective, the most important work. It's life-changing. It's incredible work. Peter Levine is the originator, and he has a lot of books if you're at all interested. Peter Levine, Levine. He's an author, has a number of books that are out there that are just outstanding. And they really talk about how the nervous system interacts with our mind and either casts off and sheds off trauma, or it lays in and stays. And that's the difference that we want, is we want the body to let this go. We want this to be cast off, for this to not be a continuing issue for this person, basically. So I'm going to go ahead and pause to go ahead and address a few of the issues here that we have. And I encourage you to maybe take a moment and write in if you do have questions. Maybe stop and think here as I'm answering them. All right. So let's talk about trauma in a 4-year-old here, Deborah. Let's see. Repeated operating room experiences. All right. No worries. I got it. Okay, so operations. Operations in particular are a particular type of trauma. This is what you're especially talking about here are medical traumas. Okay, there's different classifications of trauma. An operating room procedure is unique in that it involves sleep. So one of the biggest chronic things we see with folks who have been through operations are sleep issues. In addition to sleep issues, we tend to also see a calming down being a big, difficult thing to do. So those are kiddos that at the age of 4, I'm going to predict for you here, Deborah, for a second. I'm going to see how close I get here. Now, let's kind of play this game. So 4-year-olds often, I would expect that kiddo to perhaps be sped up, running around the house, having trouble sitting still or having trouble focusing a little bit. We might see that kiddo try to prolong bedtimes or be really anxious or squirrely at bedtimes because they're facing a sleep. The last time, or one of the times they faced a sleep, they didn't like it. Their body got hurt or changed. At least that's their conception, at least. So you might see that. You also might see those kiddos have a harder time waking up in the morning. Those kids sometimes wake up scared. The body holds memory. Now I know that's a huge, huge statement. We can dissect that one if someone wants to write in, and if that's of interest to you guys in a minute, we can. But that's the premise of this theory, is that the body holds memory. So the body, what we talk about is the way that the child wakes up from anesthesia is the way they go into anesthesia is the way they wake up from anesthesia. So going into anesthesia calm, going into anesthesia where they've been informed, where they're in a kid safe for a friendly environment. And then they might wake up again in a safe, warm, kid-friendly environment. That's probably going to go along better than a kiddo who wakes up and is thrashing or angry or alone. That's going to go ahead and set in a little bit more trauma, perhaps. So what you probably want to do is with that 4-year-old is that you want to, for example, make sure that that 4-year-old understands how important I'm going to read that in 1 second, how important it is for this to be done to their body, for this to occur, this medical procedure, because they're not going to like it. And they're not necessarily going to understand it. So those child life specialists that are so often in the hospitals, the social workers that come in with the dolls, etc., that kind of thing, that's super, super important there. Okay. So I'm going to pause here for a second and answer a few of the questions here. So from Deborah, you said she's getting more anxious about going to sleep each time. Yep. She immediately asks for me when she wakes up, she hates the gas mask. Okay, so one of the things you might want to consider Deborah doing is advocating and insisting that you be there when she wakes up in the recovery room, for example. Okay, so that you would want to do. If there's any way for her to avoid that gas mask, ask them. I would imagine what they probably can do is they can probably maybe through an IV or something, go ahead and give her the sedative. She goes all the way down. And then they go ahead and use the mask while she's sleeping, for example. So I would really advocate for that little one. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing too, can I just put in a plug that we in the somatic experiencing community are not fans of Versed, VERSED, I believe it's called. It's an anesthetic. It's part of the anesthesia process. And it actually, we're finding that can, research is showing that creates more vivid dreams and more nightmares and memories, okay, that stay with people. So we're kind of aiming people away from Versed if at all possible. Okay. Let me stop for a second. And Ellen, you have a 4-year-old and it's different. You're right. It is very difficult to distinguish from what we're talking about and normal development. You are exactly right. Yes. Some of these effects are not going to show up until later. What you can do there is you can go ahead and try to compare your 4-year-old against other 4-year-olds and see if that child is within the normal range. I think something like 50% of 4-year-olds look like they have ADD, for example. So you can't make a diagnosis yet at that age. You're going to watch and see how it develops. If you get behaviors that are super set in and super repetitive and looking a little OCD-ish, those tend to start to be early indicators of possibly some trauma in there. One of the hallmarks of trauma is that it's super repetitive. These are kiddos that we see playing the same thing in the dollhouse when they come in each week, the same story. We see these kiddos with superstitions and OCD symptoms. Those are ways that they're trying to keep themselves safe. Huge amount of trauma underneath OCD symptoms. So now the questions are coming on in. Hanging on a second. I'm going to try hard to get to all of them here. All right. Hang on. So lots of the, yeah. Okay. So yes, exactly. So let's pause for a second and let's just take 1 minute about, and I want to kind of mention you guys for a moment. I only touched on it for a second. If you guys are noticing yourselves not able to sleep, of course you're not. Gosh, can't, you're gaining weight or losing weight. You are, there's marital issues or relationship problems. If you're noticing yourself losing it with the other kids and yelling more often, crying and depression, right? These are the kinds of things, and I'm sure I missed a few of them in there. These are the kinds of things that, what I think we've learned is that we really do have to make ourselves okay. Here's my plug to you guys as mamas. Trauma comes so often, not just from procedures or episodes people go through. For youngest ones, it comes from looking at their parents, okay? So that's one of the sort of stronger pieces of trauma that can come from a kiddo is when I will talk to them and they'll tell me something like, oh, I looked at my parents' eyes and across the eyes, they could see the fear. So again, these are places where in this short amount of time, I'm not going to be able to completely answer to you what to do about all of it. I am around. I will make sure to type in my email address for some of you guys, and then we can kind of get you sent in different directions. If you guys have questions from here, no worries. But keep in mind, we really want to make sure parents are okay. Because if parents are okay, kids are not okay. Golden rule. We see it all the time in the trauma field. And I know that's huge. So I just want to kind of throw that out loud for everybody, that keep in mind, put on your own oxygen mask first. And we always say that one of the most loving things you can do for your child is to put yourself in for some support for yourself. The other thing we'll see happen is sometimes we'll see parents that go through their own healing, and then all of a sudden they say, oh, my child has settled down. My child is doing great, etc. So absolutely, there's a correlation between how parents are doing, how kiddos are doing. Let's see. Deborah, didn't seem like it's helping her. So Deborah, you and I might want to go ahead and, I see there's another comment, maybe you and I go ahead and kind of talk separate if you have specific questions about helping her with some of that. Versed, yeah, so Versed, again, it's controversial. I'm not saying that I absolutely know what to tell you to do about Versed, but it's just more controversial is what I will call out. Some people, Marianne, you're having a better experience with Versed. Okie doke, great, sounds good. Glad to hear though that she's doing better with that. Your 12-year-old son, Fabian, you have a 12-year-old son who's been asking, he's going to die from this disease now, from COVID, if he contracted. How can I help him? So you want to help that 12-year-old feel safe. So you want to give him information. I would have him ask questions at 12. In those younger ages, I encourage them to ask questions because you don't really know what they need to know, what they don't need to know. They will tell you what they need to know. I would have him ask the questions and I would go ahead and give him as much information as he can. I would also probably help your 12-year-old Fabian with finding calming activities. Try to increase, try to look at your own nervous system. Do you go ahead and bring in calm? I would start to bring in the Calm app is really good. It's just like it sounds. It's a Calm and it's an app and it has all kinds of meditations, imagery, music. Each one is about 10-15 minutes in length, so real accessible. Start doing some of that. Maybe going ahead and bringing in a weighted blanket for your 12-year-old. What he's really talking about there is he going to die from his disease? And that's sort of a bigger question. That's probably, if he can't shake that question, that might be a moment that you would consider going ahead and at least getting a consultation a little bit bigger, maybe putting him in somewhere into something somatic. Yeah. Yeah, Larry, you mentioned you tend to crash afterwards. Yep, that's very much happens. It's true. We hold it together for our kids to get through a hospitalization or a moment, and then we as parents crash. Be super good to yourself. Supernatural. It does need to happen. Remind yourself that your child is safe. I had one mama who had her child had chronic illness. What she would do is she'd go in at night and she would put her hand on the child's arm and try to feel the pulse and the breathing and remind herself before she went to bed that her child was okay. And by extension, of course, she's okay. Let's see. I'm going to take a minute here for anyone who needs to go right on time. I'm going to give you guys my email address, okay? Right down there at the bottom is my email address. And do feel very free. Yep, there's a PTSD contact support. I see Marianne is added. Yep.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, guys, we have a PTSD support group going on right now. If you want to join, please email Amy at northstarreach.org. She will send you the information. If you can't get into the session, that session, she'll send your emails back to me and I'll make sure you get in a session.
Sounds good.
Thank you for being here.
And Marianne, if you ever need any support on that, a guest person to pop in for half an hour to answer questions during the group or anything, I'd be happy to. So just feel free to reach out to me. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And Kristen, we have about 5 more minutes before we will be taken back to the main room.
Got it. Okay, sounds good. All right. Let's see. Let's take a look at Kristen. You mentioned that you have a 7-year-old here real quick. Was diagnosed PTSD. Whoops. Okay. Okay, so Kristen, with your 7-year-old, you are going to need to find some safe people at school. Super important. So you need to find who are the safe people. Is it a counselor, social worker? Is it a teacher, an assistant principal, even a school secretary? Like seriously, somebody. So I would advocate and find a super safe person at school. I would really sit down with that person and I would let them know what your child's been through. Let them know that he's starting to underreport. He's starting to not bring his needs forward. I would really work with that person to be that safe person. You might consider, for example, at the beginning, having your son do a daily or probably a daily, ideally, a daily check-in with this person. So even if it means that they go ahead and just stop in, talk to the school secretary, and the school secretary asks them what they need or how they are. So you're going to need somebody who will really work closely. I would be really curious if there's a counselor or a social worker there, although I know they're not in all the elementary schools. If not, have a good, thorough discussion with the teacher. If you're having trouble, of course, go to the principal. The other thing you want to do, in addition to changing the school environment and getting that to be safer for him or her, for him, is that you also then, when he brings a need to you at home, you want to praise him of how well he did that. And you want to help him notice that each time he brought in a need to you, that you've celebrated, you've done it. Now, the hard part is that for kiddos who have overwhelmed parents, and my gosh, how many of us are like not overwhelmed these days? It happens. But for kiddos who have overwhelmed parents, they're so kind. They don't want to bring things to us, and they don't want to overwhelm us with their needs. And yet, yes, that's where we end up getting a kiddo who is, say, shut down or afraid to bring up needs. So your beautiful part is that at 7, your son is still super malleable. You have plenty of time here, but you're going to want to sit down and talk to him about how they haven't heard his needs before, that you really want to hear his needs, that you really want to start to do this a little differently here and at school. Anytime you do a change with the kiddo, you want to go ahead and announce to the kiddo that you're creating that change, or this is how it's going to be and what'll happen. And then you want to go ahead and really celebrate and notice together each time he brings in a need, keeping in mind needs are things like, I need a glass of water, or he needs to be let in the door when it's, accidentally locked and he's outside. He needs to get new baseball socks if he's in baseball. The different pieces then, and you'll have to really start to tune into your needs are okay. Sending him the message that you as a parent can handle his needs. We can do this. You can have needs and we can handle them as a family. So I'm hoping that helps. Do I have any books? That is so sweet of you, Tara. I actually am working on one, but I'm not there yet. If you're interested, I'm eventually going to be making my way towards a project called Bottom Up Parenting, which helps and really teaches parents how to parent from the body on up. Brings in lots of practicalities, but really translates this for parents. That's very much my passion and where I'm headed in life, but I just simply haven't gotten there yet. Tara, if you or anyone else is interested, you guys are welcome to email me and let me know you'd like to get notice of when my website does finish and go up. Should be really shortly, within a few months. And then at that point, then you'll get contact and notice of postings of books, anything else, anywhere else we do. But I also would be happy in the meantime, Tara, to recommend a book for you if you have. There's a couple really quickly, and in the last minute, I'm just going to run through a few of those. And that is, I like the book Transforming the Difficult Child. First of all, that's a general book on managing kiddos, but I think it's a really good approach. It's an easier read, and it's the only parenting book I pretty regularly recommend. Transforming the Difficult Child, it's called. You also might want to look up, let's see, Maggie Klein and Peter Levine have a book about preventing trauma in your child, and that's awfully good. I can try to find that. Anyway, I think if you went on Amazon and you look up Maggie Klein, Kline, and Peter Levine, Levine, and looked for Trauma Proofing Your Child, I believe it's called. Okay, I'm sure you'll find it. Good luck, everyone. I need to let you go so you can take a break and head into the next one. And again, I just want to finish off with an apology because I'm sorry we started late. My bad. Take care. Thanks, everyone.